Hello, we have got the next chapter of The Demon Dentist. We're on chapter 22. A gigantic trifle. So, how did it go at the dentist, son? Rasped Dad, his breathing painfully shallow. Did you have to have a filling? Alfie's father was sitting in his wheelchair in the living room as his son came in through the front door. It was around 4 o'clock. The normal time that Alfie returned home from school, so his dad didn't yet have a reason to suspect anything. "Oh, it was fine, thanks, Dad," called Alfie as cheerily as he could. The false teeth rattled a little in his mouth. Alfie could see his dad's health was worsening by the day. The man was becoming weaker and weaker, like he was shrinking into his wheelchair. Alfie feared that if he told his dad the truth, he would get angry, really angry. Dad would want to speed over to the surgery instantly and have it out with the dentist. If the boy's father started shouting or even raised his voice, his breathing would become shallower and shallower. He might even collapse again. Alfie couldn't let it happen. Awkwardly, the boy shuffled into the room. When Alfie came home from school, he always gave his dad a big hug. But today, he loitered by the door. He didn't want his father to be able to inspect his teeth. Well, the late Mrs. Raj's teeth. Her false teeth, that is. "No hug today, pup," Dad appealed to him. This break in the habit made Alfie's father suspicious. "I was just going to put the tea on." "The tea can wait. I've been sitting at home all alone all day, looking forward to our hug. And I want a big bear hug, please. The biggest, widest, huggiest of hugs you can give." Carefully, Alfie closed his mouth and sucked the late Mrs. Raj's false teeth into place over his gums. Next, he paced across to his father's side of the room, leaning over the wheelchair. He put his arms around Dad, and the man held him tight. "Ah, that's better. How I love my little pup." Telling lies to his dad made Alfie feel distinctly uneasy. It was a horrible sensation which found its way down to the pit of his tummy. In shame and embarrassment, Alfie was soon trying to disentangle himself from the hug. Now, parents always know when something is wrong with their child. They can sense it. Dad was no different. "Are you sure there's nothing the matter?" he asked, looking his son right in the eye. "No, yes," spluttered Alfie, attempting to avoid his dad's gaze. "Yes, I'm sure. There's nothing the matter. The dentist went fine. Let me have a look at your teeth." Reluctantly, Alfie opened his mouth and flashed the briefest of smiles before closing it again. "See? Like new." "Well, they do look better," said Dad. "I'll pop the kettle on." With that, Alfie scurried out of the living room and into the relative safety of the kitchen. Alfie placed the blackened tin kettle on the little camping stove in the centre of the room and lit the gas. The gas from the mains had been disconnected years ago. Bills in red ink had replaced bills in black ink until one day there were no more bills at all, and no more gas. With Dad unable to work for so long, they just didn't have enough money to pay for everything. As Alfie waited for the water to boil, he reached into his pocket to check that the tooth Raj had so generously donated to his daring plan was still there. With a sigh of relief, he felt that indeed it was. Now all he had to do was wait for nightfall. And of course, try to stay awake. The gas in the tiny stove spluttered to its end just as the kettle whistled. The water had boiled, but now they were completely out of fuel. This was the last cup of tea they were going to have for quite a while. Alfie re-entered the living room with 2 cups of tea but no biscuits, because yesterday afternoon their social worker had eaten them all. "Thank you, son," said Dad. All seemed well until... Knock, knock, knock. There was somebody at the door. Alfie's heart skipped a beat. The knocks were loud and insistent. Was it Mr. Gray, the headmaster, come to tell Dad his son had been expelled? Was it PC Plank, come to arrest him after the mayhem he'd caused in town today? Or Mr. Snood, the drama teacher, still hoping to carry on the impro? "Sounds like Winnie," said Dad. "No," thought Alfie, "I can't let her in. She'll tell him everything." "I'll ask her to come back later," he said. "No, son," Dad said firmly. "Let her in. She's so thoughtful. She's probably just stopping by to see how you're feeling after the trip to the dentist." Knock, 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 knock. "Let her in," said Dad again. Alfie rushed to the door. He had to try to stop her, stall her, anything. Through the mottled glass, her multicoloured clothing made her look like a gigantic trifle. Alfie took a deep breath and turned the handle. "Ah, hello, Alfred. We meet again." "I'm sorry, Winnie, this isn't a good time," he whispered. "It's okay, I won't stay long," she said. "Just a quick chat to Mr. Griffith and I'll be on my way." With that, she bustled past Alfie. In her job as a social worker, Winnie was well practised in people not wanting her around. Busybody, meddler, pest, stirrer, do-gooder, nuisance, troublemaker, botherer, bossy boots and biscuit thief. Winnie had been called them all, and worse, much worse. As a result, she had developed a very thick skin and was well used to people slamming the door in her face. At quite a pace, she scuttled along the corridor. Alfie could do nothing more than follow in her wake. "Please, please, please don't tell my dad about what happened today." His whisper was becoming louder now. It was almost like a shouted whisper, if such a thing were possible. But Winnie seemed determined to ignore his plea. "Good afternoon, Mr. Griffith," she exclaimed theatrically as she entered the living room. Dad's face grimaced a little. Even he found her a tiny bit annoying, her voice a few notches too loud. Dad squinted as he tried to take in what the social worker was wearing today. This time, Winnie had outdone herself. Her collective clothes, bangles and makeup were sporting more shades of colour than would be found in even the wildest of colouring pencils. "Ah, tea, thanking you kindly." She picked up Alfie's cup and had a loud slurp, followed by an even louder sigh, then dropped down onto the sofa with all her weight. Winnie hit it with such force that a huge cloud of dust burst from the cushions into the air. "Have a seat, Winnie," ventured Alfie's father a little too late. "Dad, please don't listen to her. I can explain," said the boy, panicking in the doorway. "Oh, I can't wait to hear this," pronounced Winnie. "Alfie has told me virtually nothing about his trip to the dentist," Dad said. "Perhaps, Winnie, you can tell me what happened." "Dad, please believe me," pleaded the boy. "I was going to tell you." "Oh, Mr. Griffith, it's quite a story, said the lady. Alfie was sure Winnie was about to drop him headfirst into an enormous vat labelled trouble. "Let me get comfortable," she said, plumping up the cushions behind her and stretching out her legs. "This is going to take some time." Chapter 23. Jet-powered bottom. "Before I begin," continued Winnie, lounging on the sofa like Cleopatra, Queen of the Nile, "I would like one of your delicious biscuits." Since Dad's illness had confined him to a wheelchair, Alfie had become responsible for all the food shopping. He knew that bungalow was a certified biscuit-free zone. "You ate the last one yesterday," said Alfie. "Remember?" "Cake," she tried, with a hopeful and teasing lilt in her voice. "A nice slice of cake?" Winnie looked like the kind of woman who, when offered a piece of cake, would leave the slice and take the rest. "No," replied the boy. He didn't need to check. They never had cake, not even on birthdays. Oh dear, mused the lady. "Chocolate?" "We don't have any," replied Alfie. "Nothing chocolatey in the house?" persisted Winnie. "No." "Nothing chocolate covered or chocolate flavoured?" "No." "Chocolate chipped, coated, swirled, layered, sprayed, encrusted, sprinkled, blended, melted or dipped?" Alfie took a breath before replying. Winnie was being so annoying it was hard not to shout. "There is nothing in any way chocolatey in the house." There was a long pause. Infused? With that, Winnie was back in the game. "No! Nothing infused with chocolate. No. Nothing with even a hint or a whiff or a trace or a suggestion of chocolate. No. Something that's not meant to have chocolate in, but might have chocolate in by accident." Both Dad and Alfie looked flummoxed by this. "Like what?" asked Dad, who had been watching this contest as if it were a tennis match. "Yes, what?" implored the boy. The lady looked deep in thought for a moment. "Well, that could really be anything that is labelled chocolate-free." "No," barked the boy. "We don't have anything chocolatey, chocolate flavoured, chocolate infused or chocolate chocolated." "All right," huffed Winnie. "I only asked." With that, she slurped her tea and sighed again. Alfie perched on the edge of the armchair next to Dad and folded his arms. Now he was ready to accept his fate. As he leaned back, a little packet of all coffee Revels that Raj had given him fell out of his trouser pocket and onto the floor. In a heartbeat, Winnie's eyes were on them, like a killer whale that's just seen an overweight seal plop on an iceberg and into the sea. "Well then, young Alfred, what on earth could that be?" she teased. She knew perfectly well it was a bag of chocolate-coated confectionery. "Nothing," replied Alfie quickly. "It's nothing, son," chimed in Dad unhelpfully. "It looks to me like a packet of chocolates." Winnie stared at the boy. "Oh, these, yes, sorry. When you said chocolate-covered, coated or infused, I didn't think that included Revels." There was a hush before Winnie whispered, "I think you know full well that Revels are chocolate-coated confectionery." "Offer the nice lady one," prompted Dad. Alfie needed those sweets. If he ate one every half hour, those chocolate-covered coffee creams would keep him from falling asleep. Without those much-needed shots of caffeine, what chance would Alfie have of catching whoever was responsible for leaving the unspeakable horrors under children's pillows? Reluctantly, he picked up the packet and sloped over to Winnie. "Thank you, young man. Well, we got there in the end. Now, which flavour Revel shall I have?" I like them all apart from the coffee ones." "No one likes the coffee ones," agreed Dad. "Good luck," thought Alfie. If Raj had sorted them properly, like he said, every single one was coffee. "I can't have coffee anyway," continued Winnie. "Goes right through me." Dad and son shared a look that said simply, too much information. Neither wanted to imagine what this lady looked like glued to the toilet. Greedily, Winnie ripped open the bag and helped herself. She picked out the first Revel and popped it in her mouth. She chewed for a moment before her face contorted at the sour taste of coffee slipped down her throat. "No, it's coffee," she moaned. "The first one too, what rotten luck." Now it was Alfie's turn to smirk. He had to bury his head in his shirt to hide his ever-widening smile. "Let me have a different one to take the taste away," she said. So Winnie helped herself to another Revel. Again, her face soured. "Coffee again? No, I need a different one." Had Raj managed to sort the Revels correctly, or had he left the odd rogue raisin Revel in? Alfie was praying he hadn't. Winnie selected another. This one must be toffee, my favourite of all the Revels." Carefully, she began inspecting the tiny chocolate. "Or orange cream? No, this is definitely toffee. The good Lord is finally smiling upon me." After rolling it, sniffing it and even licking it, she finally put a Revel in her mouth. It melted on her tongue, and as soon as the chocolate coating had dissolved, Winnie's face once again contorted in complete and utter revulsion. It was as if a deadly poisonous jellyfish had swum straight into her mouth. There's her face's look. "Coffee! No!" she whined. Then she took another, and another, and another. Each one gobbled in hope to take the taste of the last one away, each one just making it worse. Soon the whole packet had been well and truly demolished, and Winnie had a belly full of coffee. She sat there on the sofa with chocolate round her mouth and an expression of pure misery on her face. "Every single blasted one was coffee," she protested. "Oh dear," uttered Alfie, trying his hardest not to burst out laughing. "How could that have happened?" Dad looked very surprised. "What are the chances of that? Must be 1,000,000 to 1. His son tried to look as innocent as possible, which somehow made him look extremely guilty. But now was the calm before the storm. Then out of the silence came a sound, a long, low, rumbling sound. It was like the storm was breaking in some far-off mythical land. Dad and Alfie looked at each other and then turned their gazes to Winnie. The poor lady looked down round her tummy. It was rumbling and grumbling and expanding at an alarming rate. If It was as if it was a balloon that was so full of air it was about to pop. "I told you coffee goes right through me," exclaimed the woman. "My bottom is about to explode." "Well," mused Alfie, looking more than a little smug, "I suppose your story will have to wait for another day." Yes, I have to go," exclaimed Winnie. "Now, right now." With that, Winnie went to stand up. As she straightened, her bottom burped. Loudly and violently. In fact, now is too late. There was another bottom burp, even louder and violenter than the first. "Oh dear, excuse me." The lady was deeply embarrassed to have lost control of her bottom so completely. She squatted down a little as she scuttled out of the room sideways like a crab. Winnie was desperately hoping to contain the wind, but with each step out of the room, her bum let rip a thunderous blast of air. Alfie found this hilarious. He had tears in his eyes now. Dad, who was not meant to find this funny as an adult, he had his hand over his mouth to stop himself from sniggering too. As they heard the door slam behind her, the pair finally erupted with laughter, hooting and honking like sea lions. Dad laughed so much that he slid out of his wheelchair and plopped onto the floor. They rolled around for a while on the carpet, cuddling and laughing. Eventually, Alfie shuffled over on his knees to the window to watch Winnie zoom off. The moped seemed to be going 100 times faster than usual. Perhaps her bottom, with the coffee-scented gas whooshing out of it, was functioning like a jet power engine. With the social worker gone, Alfie was out of trouble. For now. But the boy was about to step into a world more dangerous than he could ever imagine. Interesting. Let's see.